All right, welcome. It's 10:30 and I like to be punctual. I know educators have more to do than anyone else in the world. So I really respect your time. Thank you for coming. My name is Caroline Hoppenwasser. You are here in a module on engaging families, and this is course E, which is around building learning partnerships with families. And if you haven't come to the other courses, that's fine. I will share more information about them with you in case you're interested. But I want you to know that content today is from New York State, and it is being presented to you through Solved, a NICEAD CTLE approved vendor. So you will be receiving a CTLE credit for attending this course, and I'll tell you more about how that works at the end of our time together. I also want to let you know that this session is being recorded so it can be shared with others so we can share our knowledge. And you can decide whether or not you would like to be on camera, but I would encourage you when possible to take yourself off mute and talk with us. And also when we go to breakout rooms, if you can turn on your camera to talk with people, it always makes it so much more interesting. So here's a little bit more about me. As I said, I'm Dr. Caroline Hoppenwasser. I'm an instructional consultant for Solved. I have a doctorate in literacy education. And for the past 25 years, I've been an educator in public schools. I started my career as a kindergarten teacher. And for 14 years, I worked at SUNY New Paltz in teacher preparation. So I'm happy to be here with you today, and I'd love to know a little bit about you, the grade or subjects you teach, your role in your school, anything you'd like to share about that. And then I always like to start with a question that just is interesting to me. So my question today is, if you had to sing karaoke right now, what song would you pick? I, of course, would pick Sweet Caroline, as it goes with my name. Don't worry, I won't make you sing it. I just want to know what it would be. All right, so as you're checking in the chat with your grades, subjects, role in your school, and the song you would karaoke, I'm going to be sharing some more information about our time together. Here are our norms for our meeting. Please be here now and take an inquiry stance. We want to hear all voices, so please make room for everyone's opinions and take responsibility for the impact of what you share. I promise that we will start and end on time. And please, any statements you make ground in evidence or in your personal experience. So I'm looking, I see a lot of good mornings in the chat. Please tell me more. Tell me about who you are, where you're from. So we can see who else come here today. So we have these norms. What's great about all the different roles that show up for professional development about family is whoever you are, whatever your role in the school, family is key to success for our students. My karaoke song would be I Will Survive. I love that. Parent coordinator for 3K to 8th grade. We've got a family worker. Oh, we've got multiple family workers. Tale as old as time to sing. I love it. All right, keep that coming in the chat. As I said, this is a module on engaging families, and we're here on course D, Building Learning Partnerships. And if you're interested, courses A, B, C, D, E, and F will be taught again in order starting next Monday. I'll be starting with A, and each Monday after that will be continuing. So if you would like to go back to some of the other courses or go forward to family and community partnerships, you'll have the opportunity to do that. And I'll share with you how to register for those at the end of this as well. Let's see, we've got special ed teacher, we've got paraprofessional, we've got Grade 3 teacher, and I'd sing Heaven is a Place on Earth, Belinda Carlisle. I'm already excited about y'all as a good group because I can always tell when you answer the silly questions that I ask. I know you're gonna, when we get to the serious questions, you're gonna be engaged as well. Thank you. All right. So let's talk about our agenda today. Our essential questions are: how can families and teachers work together to support student success? And two, what role do educators have in assisting families to support learning at home? Our objectives are to identify and understand key leverage points for sustaining family engagement and supporting educational equity, and identify and develop explicit strategies for partnering with families as teaching and learning partners. All right. Oh, I need to keep an eye on still admitting people. People are still coming in. All right. The next thing I want to share with you is our note catcher. I'm going to put a link in the chat. You go ahead and click that and open it. It will ask you to make a copy. Like so, and then it will have the information that will be very helpful to you today. It's going to have our key terms. It's going to have places to take notes on a short video. It's got places to take notes, and it's got our activities. So I'm going to put that in again. Oh my gosh. Please go back in the chat and take time to read the introductions and the songs people would sing. It says a lot about who's here and what they're going through. All right, so open your note catcher. Everyone should have that. And we're going to now look at the key terms together for this course: family partnership, learning pod, or micro school, opportunity gap, and leverage points. So let's get into it. All right, family partnerships are reciprocal relationships between schools, educators, and parents characterized by two-way communication and a shared responsibility for children's learning. So if you've been to any of the other courses in this module, this does not sound surprising to you. There is a huge focus on reciprocal relationships where we have involved parents as partners in building the school goals and visions, and we use two-way communication to do it. And that is not just the school sharing information, but receiving information from parents and creating a dialogue. So we're going to do a stop and jot for these key terms. The first one being family partnerships. And I want you to take 1 minute to jot down how in your role or your school community environment you see this happening right now, or ways that you don't see it happening, where families are in reciprocal relationships and you use two-way communication. And then I'll ask for you to share that in the chat. So I'm setting our timer for 1 minute. All right, time's up. Please feel free to share in the chat anything that you would like about your experience with family partnerships. And we're going to go to our next term, which is learning pod or micro school. So these popped up a lot in the pandemic. A learning pod or micro school consists of small groups of learners under the academic supervision of families or hired instructors. So again, I'm going to set our timer for 1 minute for you to stop and jot your experience or possibly questions if you don't have experience with these. If you're just coming in, I'm putting a link to a note catcher in the chat for you to open. And it will help you. Right now, we're discussing some important terms for our course today. All right, so time's up. Let's go to our next big term for today is opportunity gap. And thank you to everyone who's putting things into the chat. Feel free at any time to put into the chat what you're noticing related to content or questions you have. I'm going to do my best to keep up with the presentation and the chat, but be sure to go back and look at what others are saying. So the opportunity gap is the inequitable distribution of resources. So think about equal or equitable. Equal means everybody has the same. Equitable means everybody has what they actually need. So the opportunity gap is the inequitable distribution of resources that contributes to or perpetuates learning gaps between groups of students. So again, here's your 1 minute to stop and jot. Where have you noticed in your school environment opportunity gaps? Or where has your school worked to fill these gaps already? All right. I'd love it if anyone feels comfortable sharing with us. What you've noticed at your school. Yes, someone is talking. Fabulous.
So I would have to say that the assumption of all our students having internet and devices and assigning digital work to our students prior to that knowledge.
Right. So that's equal and equitable, right? So your school could say, here, everyone have a Chromebook and everyone has the same. Now we're fine. But equitable, it isn't, because you're making the assumption that everyone has internet at home. So that's a perfect example of a gap that really showed up in the pandemic and moving forward. So we discussed in I believe it's course A in this module, this gap as well, and some solutions for that. But we're going to now talk about some leverage points. And these are ways, very small, effective ways that we can change for the better. So leverage points refer to the most effective places in a system where small, well-focused action can produce significant lasting improvements. So we're going to spend a good portion of the rest of this PD together thinking about, learning about, and contemplating these leverage points that wherever you are in your school environment, you have access to, because we don't all have access to all of them. All right, so let's look at, first of all, let's look at some things we learned about family engagement and remote learning. So during the shift to remote learning in 2020, 2021, when the pandemic hit, what has been determined through research is that family engagement increased significantly, including among families of the most vulnerable groups of students. Now, that may not have been your experience, but in a more global view of New York State, that research has shown that was an experience that happened, that family engagement actually increased, especially among the most vulnerable groups of students. So families of these students reported feeling more confident helping their children with schoolwork and more knowledgeable about school events and dynamics than they did prior to the pandemic. So just let that sink in for a minute and think about why that might be the case. However, as you've stated, remote learning also exposed structural and other inequities within education, and in some instances exacerbated educational inequity. So on the one hand, we have parents felt more engaged. They understood more about what was happening at school. And on the other hand, it showed huge inequity, especially in our digital platforms. So now let's think about, we're going to watch a short video on learning pods and educational equity. I'm going to stop sharing for a minute and make sure I've shared with sound. And you're going to let me know if you cannot hear this video.
In the aftermath of the 2020 school closures and while reopening was looking uncertain, the phenomenon of the learning pod, or microschool, took off in communities across the country. Families with the time, the financial means, or both formed small, in-person learning groups. Some parents worked collaboratively to teach the pod, while others hired teachers, tutors, or other specialists to oversee student learning. This practice, while understandable, immediately raised a red flag about educational equity. In a Facebook group called Pandemic Pods and Microschools, parent Alexis Kushner de la Pena made this observation after noticing that most of the other parents in the group were white professionals. "We should all think about how pods might further the gap between our students," she posted. Families of underserved communities might not be engaging on Facebook, might not speak English, might not have means to pay, to drive, etc. The learning pod approach that arose during COVID-19 meant that some parents could take control of their children's safety, social lives, and academic progress. It also exposed the structural inequities preventing many families from ensuring the same ideal for their children. Let's take a look at how we can support every child's learning pod through family partners.
Okay, so again, highlighting the inequity.
In the
And now
aftermath,
we want to think about what
in
can
the
we
aftermath
do?
of the 2020
Boy, I can't
school
make her stop
closures and while
talking. There we go. Now we want to think about knowing that when we did have the pandemic and we had moved to a lot of digital platforms, how can we sustain family engagement while promoting educational equity, knowing that it's possible to include parents and have them feel even more engaged using some of these digital tools? So let's talk about the leverage points for building equity. And remember, a leverage point it can be a very small place, but a very effective place in a system that can produce significant lasting improvements. So leverage points in a long-range study examining the implementation of digital tool use in low resource school districts identified these 4 leverage points for increasing equity and supporting parents as co-teachers across learning environments. And what across learning environments means is just simply one end of that continuum would be entirely in school in the classroom. The other end of that continuum is entirely online. And we want to now blend the best of both worlds as appropriate for our school community to best serve our families. So here are the 4 leverage points that were identified: policy, budget, and contract structure, continuous targeted learning opportunities, student-centered instruction, and capacity for research and evaluation. So we're going to dig a little bit deeper into each of these. And what I want you to think about as we do is, in your particular role, you have more ability to leverage places in these spaces. So you're going to think about, what can I do? Because it doesn't have to be huge. We're looking for small places that can make change. So what do you have agency with within these 4 points that you can think about exacting some change? Leverage point 1. We want structure policies, contracts, and budgets to provide transparency and resources for implementation. Emphasize equity and resource allocations, and engage parents in decision making. So when we think about the key points in leverage point 1, it's transparency, so that everyone involved in the school system, that means the families, the children, the teachers, everyone understands about resources and their implementation. We want to emphasize equity in resource allocation, not just everybody having the same, but who needs what, and engage parents in making those choices. The school budget should reflect equity, meeting people where they are and getting them what they need, versus equality, everyone gets the same. This includes digital devices, internet access, instructional materials, and teachers' time. Educators should advocate for all students and families' basic needs to be met so that they have necessary foundations for learning. So the question for you here is, all right, this is the leverage point. Where in my sphere of influence can I advocate for this to happen? So we want opportunities for the school community to discuss what it would take to collaborate with parents as teaching partners, and the school community to discuss the role of parents in deciding which digital platforms to use. So often in schools, everything is decided, maybe not even in the school building level, at the district level, at the state level, and the parents are taken out of the decisions, and then people wonder why the parents are not involved. Well, they were never involved. And then things, we all know, when things are dictated to us, we are much more likely to resist for a variety of reasons. All right, so let's talk about leverage point 2. Offer targeted and continuous learning opportunities to build the capacity of educators and families to work together in implementing digital learning effectively. So what can that look like? Continuous learning opportunities to build capacity for educators as well as families to do digital learning. So that looks like specific supports for classroom teachers put in place to enable engagement with all families about digital learning. So instruction is provided on how to connect multilingual families with translation and interpretation services as need. So as classroom teachers, you're provided with support so that then you can support families. And families also have access to training and support about using digital tools and understanding instructional approaches. Oops, I'm going backwards. Common across learning environments. So there's training built in for teachers and families. So think about, in your sphere of influence, what could that look like? What is a small step that could look like? And we're going to have time to talk about and think about these things together after we talk about each of these leverage points. We're going to talk about them in breakout rooms. So right now you're just thinking, what could this look like in a small step that I could take? Leverage point 3, prioritize student-centered and responsive instruction designed to facilitate authentic student work. So in the next class that I teach, course F, authentic student work that involves families, we talk about service learning. So that's one example. And we want parents and students seen as experts in their own cultural contexts and partners in designing curriculum and instruction that reflects and sustain those cultural contexts. So again, all of these leverage points include families as active decision makers and students as active participants in their learning. And we're considering culture as well as equity throughout. And finally, leverage point 4. Build capacity for research and evaluation so that parents and families can offer feedback and discuss the effectiveness of various digital tools or platforms. So it's not just, here it is, use it. It's, you've helped us decide what to use. We've trained everyone on how to use it. And now we're evaluating whether it works or not and what we could do to improve. Parents and students should review digital platforms and tools. All families should have access to and information about the platforms and tools. Parents and students have a role in collecting feedback from other parents about digital platforms. For example, using a participatory evaluation approach by gathering questions directly from families. So here's our first activity. In breakout rooms, I'm going to put you in some breakout rooms here in a moment. And you're going to discuss how well you and your school community are actively making use of leverage points. You can share challenges or victories you've experienced in terms of family engagement across learning environments. All right, so if you have any questions about our directions, please let me know now. Putting the chat back up so I can see it. And I am going to set up our breakout rooms. In your breakout room, if you are able to come on camera, it's always super helpful to be able to see each other. So consider that. If not, we understand, but please come into your breakout room ready to actively discuss. So I have opened the rooms. You should be able to go into your rooms now. All right, everyone's coming back. Here we are. I could see everyone was chatting in their rooms. I'd love if you would share any ideas you came up with in your breakout room about how to make use of some of these leverage points. You can share in the chat, or we'd love for you to come off mute and talk with us. And I love how many people's faces I can see. That's always exciting. Anyone willing to share on off mute? Kevin, I see your hand.
Hi. Yeah, we were talking about just the value and the need for the kids to have actual interaction with adults and other people. I know in my district, too many parents, the kids are there to raise themselves, or it feels that way. Some parents are very difficult to reach or get a return call from, whatever the case may be. Like myself, I always give my phone number, my cell number. I invite my parents to call me at different hours. And it's, I'll be dipped if they actually do call. Once in a while, I do get some really neat calls, but it's hard to get a response. And I mean, my personal value system, this is my child. I have to take care of my child, the most important asset I have. And I get very upset when some of the parents don't seem to share that feeling about their own children. But as a teacher, we get to help make a difference there.
Yeah, Kevin, I want to encourage you to come to the course I just taught, which is course D, where we talk in particular about that feeling of parents are not involved. And we talk about the why that might happen and how we can make a difference in that. So I feel like that would be just a plug. It's a free course. So I feel like I get to advertise without pressuring anyone. But we went in more detail into that. But if you think about, we only control so much, right? And it's a very
Right.
small amount. So you're leveraging what you can. You right this minute, you've made these offers of how to contact you. And so they're not being taken. And so then the question becomes for you is why I've made these offers, which seem really incredible. Why aren't people taking them? And that's where you find the leverage point. So usually it's a bigger issue of what are these families' prior experiences with schools? How do they feel about the school environment? Maybe not you as an individual teacher that
Right.
is creating a barrier between them and actually using that resource. So that's just, it's all bigger than we can figure out in an hour. But one of the things that I try to do in these PDs is really leave you with the questions to help you think about it. So if I'm making this great offer and people aren't accepting it, what is it? And what is the most generous assumption I can make about that? And it's because it's very easy as teachers. I feel like we can become very jaded very quickly when we don't get response over time. That's totally normal and a human response, right? It's like, oh my gosh, I'm doing all of this work and I'm not getting reciprocity. But then if I reframe it and say, why? What is the barrier to this family? Why are they not using this resource? And how can I leverage that and make a little move? It can be helpful. So we can't solve this problem in an hour, but I do come sign up for D and we'll talk about it even more. Thank you for sharing.
Sure.
Is there anyone else you'd like to share? I haven't seen anything show up in the chat. Is there anyone
Hi.
else? Oh, I just did. Oh, Stephanie. Yes.
Hello, how are you?
Good.
Awesome. Okay. So I'm a music teacher at my school. And I do my best to try to incorporate the parents in everything that I try to do. And even when our children are not doing what they're supposed to do, I try to make sure to involve the parents so that we could come up with strategies on how to help the children. I had an incident happen maybe last week or what have you. Sometimes the parents are not too willing to speak to you neither. I try to talk to the parent or reach out to try to get support with the child. And sometimes the parents will get mad and start cursing at you, which happened to me. So, it's kind of discouraging as a teacher when you want to make these connections, and especially when the parents are not as cooperative with you or what have you, which kind of discourages me a little bit. I don't know what to say regarding that. That's all I have to share.
Stephanie, thank you for sharing that. And so it's so multi-layered, right? Because as a person, you do not deserve to be cursed at ever for any reason. So that is discouraging and makes you feel like, okay, this is not, how am I supposed to make a difference this way? So one of the things that I think
Absolutely.
about is where am I able to find some pockets where I can make some change that feels good to me as well? Because we have to keep feeding our spirits as teachers to keep showing up, right? Because there's so many people or situations that are depleting. So again, I take a deep breath. I'm like, all right, what is the experience that parent had or has had with school that made them immediately jump to this conclusion and this behavior? And it had nothing
Right.
to do with you. It had nothing to do with you. It had to do with
No.
a lot of previous things. So then we think about, all right, what as the school are we doing to change these parents' experiences with schools as a whole? Because it takes time to keep building a new understanding with families who've had traditionally really negative experiences with school for many reasons. And you as an individual then have to find support for yourself. But obviously if people curse at you, you get to hang up on them because you don't need to be like, I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
We can't have a productive discussion this way because no, that's not,
Absolutely.
yeah. But then how do you come back and think about, all right, well, what can I do next time? What can I do instead? How can we reframe this for everyone?
Well, what I did to kind of change the narrative of the entire situation, because the parent did go and speak to the principal, and the principal only heard one side of the story and then eventually heard mine. The parent came in, actually, but mind you, she came in while I was teaching a class, and the principal brings her upstairs to me while teaching a class. So I came out into the hallway, and it's like, a lot of us, we have to kind of put on our game face or what have you and deal with these circumstances. Now, I didn't know whether this parent was going to come and beat me up, when the principal brought her upstairs. But however, I was able to change that narrative and explain to her that, listen, that we're only trying to do what's best for your child. We care about them. And then also, too, what helped her to kind of come to understanding with me after that is the fact that I also have children. I have 4 grown children or what have you, who had the same situation in school, so I was able to relate. And it ended out, I'm not going to lie to you, in an entire where I had to hug this parent. And, we kind of, now she understands me. The point is that we sometimes have to take the extras, combat the situation, be rude too, so it turned out good afterwards.
Isn't that amazing how that can happen sometimes? And so there are a lot of points where that went terribly wrong before it got to you. That principal should not have brought that. But so this leads us perfectly into the next points that I want to share in this presentation to think about. So thinking about relationships, routines, and resources, one of the things that would have helped that situation and stopped it from being that way is if there were clear relationships, routines, and resources. We think about those in our classroom. We're familiar with those educator moves when working with our students, but we can have them across families and across schools. So you would know, and the principal would know that, our routine is if you're very upset about your child, right, and you need to meet with your teacher and you've come to the principal, we have a routine that we run because you can't go and interrupt your child's teacher right now. But you would know that ahead of time and that would be in place. So the last thing I want to share is thinking about these relationships, routines, and resources, and how we can now start as teachers thinking about how can we make this a school culture? How can we set this up so parents and families and principals and administrators and all of us are on the same page about these? So we want relationships that focus on positive connections that foster interaction and establish this nurturing environment of trust. So that we don't get to the point where the first interaction, and I'm not saying, Stephanie, that this was your first interaction with this parent. I'm just saying that often it happens. The first interaction is a bad interaction. It's about what was wrong with your kid or what happened that went wrong.
Right.
Well, from the get-go, want to set up relationships where we here's very clearly we're stating what we're trying to do and build positive connections. And we have to have certain routines to do that. We have to have
Absolutely.
predictable practices and structures. So you know that we're going to have two-way communication with families this way. We're going to be sharing these kinds of things, and we're going to be asking you how we can support you. And the principal's going to also know that they're not going to bring you an upset parent in the middle of your class, because it's never going to go well. If it goes well in the hallway, the children in the
Absolutely.
classroom, who knows what they just started doing? I mean, come on.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Yeah, I've been there. I know exactly what it's like. Well, principal, are you going to go in there and take care of the 20 children I just left in the classroom? No,
Right.
I'm just going to walk away now. Bye. And
But I'm
then
just glad I
resources.
changed it. So
Yeah. The
sorry about
resources focus area refers to the materials, tools, and supplies that support the active learning and skill development across learning environments. So now, in addition to thinking about these leverage points, we're thinking about bringing in these 3 R's and how we can use them with families, not just in our little sphere of our classroom, but in the bigger sphere of our whole school community, to create the environment that's more inclusive for our families, so that they have a really clear understanding of what to do and they're part of building that as well. So here's some things to think about in implementing each of these R's. When relationships, it's seeking feedback about preferred methods of communication. It's working together, clarifying roles and responsibility by sharing learning goals and defining expectations for both home and school learning. And it's establishing well-being structures for students by establishing a healthy balance between work and relaxation and connecting with families. For routines, we want to think about establishing weekly learning routines and goal setting. We're going to think about community routines and procedures, leveraging age-appropriate digital tools for organizational development, and developing consistent support routines for families. So think about, if we have digital tools, I've given you all a Chromebook, and no one in your family knows how to use a Chromebook. Do we have office hours set up where families can come in and learn how to do their Chromebook, either digital or in person, where they're having support? And then the last one, and I'm sorry I'm going fast, but again, it's an hour. I'm planting a lot of seeds. Resources, developing shared expectations for dedicated personal workspaces if we're having online learning, providing explicit instruction regarding instructional materials and standardized technology tools to minimize the learning curve for families. Not saying, here's we use Google Classroom, good luck. It's, how do I help you understand how to use Google Classroom? And support structures for troubleshooting technology issues and providing alternative means to access learning materials. So our last activity, which we're not going to have time for in our session today, but I want you to think about it, and it's there on your note catcher for you, is to think about these 3 R's and identify 2 to 3 strategies you would like to implement in the future. And I've, on your note catcher, put these slides about the 3 R's to help you think about that. And so you can think about that right now if you'd like to, but I would like to meet our goal of ending on time, share information with you about your CTLE credit for today, and also how to register for more professional development from Solved. So you will get an email within 24 hours with your CTLE credit. You can use this QR code, which is also on your note catcher, to sign up for more synchronous professional development like we had today, where you come for an hour and we have discussion and work together. You can also do all of these courses asynchronously and also receive a CTLE credit. So you have both options. And as I said, families will be running all of the families again. So starting next Monday, I'll be starting with families A and working through the progression each Monday from 2:30 to 3:30. So please know there are we have more information because families is deep. We could do this. This is a non-ending. How do we keep improving this? Here's another exciting thing. When you receive your email with your CTLE credit, it will have a unique referral code. If you get 6 colleagues to sign up for our synchronous or asynchronous courses, and they use your unique code that you give them, Solved will send you a $50 Amazon gift card for your classroom. So look for that code and go and get your neighbor down the hall to sign up. Go get you some free money. I'm all for people getting free money. The last thing for you to do today is fill out a survey. It's going to ask you just a few short questions about how we could improve this, and also ask you for an email. So it's a backup email to make sure we're getting you your CTLE credit. So I have put the link in the chat to this survey. Please take a moment and make sure you can open it. And then I'm going to leave you with this slide. Right now, we have time for you to ask any questions of me or share any final comments, either in the chat or you can come off mute. You can also email me at caroline.hoppemwasser@solvedconsulting.com. If you have any CTLE related inquiries, you can also reach out to admin@solvedconsulting.com. So you just take a picture of this slide in case you don't receive your CTLE credit for any reason within after 24 hours, you can reach out. So we have 4 minutes left. We're coming in on time. Please take those moments to fill out your survey. Please let me know if you're having any trouble opening it. Once you've filled out your survey, you are free to go. Thank you so much for coming today. Thank you for participating, whole group, chat, and breakout groups. It makes this such an interesting experience when we all work together to learn and share. So thank you very much.
733251977.
And everyone say thank you in the chat. You're most welcome.
Thank you for your course. Have a good day.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Everyone be well.